ahead and start it, and then I'm going to give you guys the cue, okay?
Welcome back to Ask a Coroner, Inside the Coroner's Office, the podcast where we answer the questions people have always wanted to know and ask about death investigations. I'm Mark Hammond, Boyd County Coroner.
I'm Bailey Rucker, Deputy Coroner, and today we're going to be answering a question that we get all the time, and that's what's the difference between a coroner and a medical examiner? And everything is depicted differently in TV shows. It varies across the state, so we're going to try to get in as many details as we can to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have been asking. So, there's a lot of different systems in the U.S. So, what are those systems, and how does Kentucky fall in there first?
Mainly, there's really about 4 systems across the United States. So we have the coroner system, which a lot of people use. We have a medical examiner system. We have a district medical examiner system, and then a county medical examiner system a lot of times. Kentucky and a lot of states, I will say, use a hybrid system, and that's what Kentucky uses. So we have a hybrid system made up of the county coroners, and they are elected officials like we've talked about in the last couple of episodes. And then from there, if the coroner needs assistance, that's when they call the medical examiner, and they will transport the decedent to the medical examiner's office for autopsy, or they'll talk to the medical examiner and get some advice of what needs to go with the next steps.
So I think another question that we kept getting was, how do you become a coroner, and how does that vary in states?
It varies in every state. So in Kentucky, you have to be 24 years of age. You have to live in the county that you are going to run for coroner for at least a year, and you can't have any felonies, anything like that. And then you can, of course, run, and it's through an election every 4 years. If you look at border states, if you look at where we sit on a border state with Ohio and West Virginia, in Ohio, the difference is they have a coroner system, but the coroner has to be a physician. And then what they do, they have death investigators. And death investigators will go out and actually do a lot of the investigation on that death. And then the coroner takes care of signing out that death and making sure it's certified and everything. West Virginia, they work on a state medical examiner system. So in Charleston, West Virginia is where basically the ME's office is. And then each county has death investigators that will go out, or medical investigators that will go out and actually do the investigating and decide what goes up for autopsy and what doesn't.
And I know I learned about this a couple years ago. Louisiana, their coroners have to be medical examiners in each county. Is there any other place you know of that does that?
It's like, look at Los Angeles. Los Angeles, the actual sheriff or the undersheriff is who picks the coroner there. So it's not really an elected official, and then it runs like that. So when you look at Las Vegas and you look at other cities, other states, everybody kind of has their own twist of how they do that. So that's the big thing. But Kentucky, like Kentucky's set up, is the hybrid system is where most of those actually fall into play to some degree anyways. And the reason being, you know as well as I do, that a pathologist or a medical examiner is usually a forensic pathologist, and that takes many, many years of schooling.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes in. There's a shortage of pathologists or forensic pathologists across the United States everywhere.
Yeah. I think at one point there was like only 250 in the entire U.S. of medical examiners. And you look at the states that have to have so many of them for the different counties, and that number really shrinks to a system like us where we only have 2 regional offices currently open. So we went over what a coroner actually is in the first episode. So now we got to break down what a medical examiner is. And then we've used 2 terms, and that's medical examiner and forensic pathologist. So how do those kind of differ?
And those can be different, and it depends on what state it is. A medical examiner may be a doctor instead of just a forensic pathologist. Forensic pathologist is more of a specialist. There is also regular pathologists out there, that do pathological testing at hospitals and different things like that. So there are people that are not true forensic pathologists. Kentucky uses forensic pathologists in anybody that does the autopsies in our medical examiner system that's there. And even the medical examiner itself for the state is a forensic pathologist. So the way Kentucky does it is we used to have 4 different sites. So we had a site in Frankfort, which was a central site that handled pretty much everything on the eastern side of the state. Then you had one in Louisville that handled everything around that area, one in northern Kentucky, and then one down in Madisonville, Kentucky to handle all the western stuff. Since that time and over the years, and because of the shortage, we know that just as well as that, and people retire, different things that happens. And in Kentucky, it was pay. Pay was a big factor that probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, Kentucky had actually shut down to one medical examiner's office pretty much and was running everything out of Louisville. So when that happened, it was a crisis by any means. And luckily, that crisis got avoided, and we were able to hire more people, raise the pay, different things like that. So now we have 2 of those offices open. They're building the office in northern Kentucky right now, and hopefully that'll be done to take a lot of stress off the ME's offices, because the more stress it's on a single office, the longer a lot of times it takes for us to get our answers that we need.
Okay, so the crisis, the shortage that we've been dealing with, what are the steps to become a forensic pathologist?
You would probably tell me better than anybody, because that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go through the steps really quick before we get into everything else. So you do your undergrad, you get a 4-year degree, and then you have to actually complete med school, and that can be an MD or a DO school, it doesn't matter. But then you do your residency like you normally would for med school, and then you actually have to do, like you said, a specialty program in forensics if you want to be a forensic pathologist, which is what's required in Kentucky. So that's like a 1 to 2 year program, and then you start working. That's pretty.
And you do a fellowship, right?
Yeah, you have,
so you have to do the
forensic fellowship.
Yeah, so the fellowship takes even longer. So
Yeah.
you're looking at how many years you think?
It was like
14?
it was like 10 to 12, and then you could do extra training and stuff like that depending on where you wanted to go and stuff. So it's a whole long ride, but it's definitely worth it if you stick it out. And I mean, it's as interesting as it all gets out, especially when, you know, in Kentucky, you're getting cases from everywhere. I mean, it's nonstop all day.
And every coroner's office is different. I think we talked about Indiana. At one time, if you were a coroner in Indiana and you needed an autopsy, you had numbers to call around.
Yeah.
And so you had a lot of forensic pathologists that would moonlight and take that case, but they set the price. And then if you look at other states where it's such a shortage, they will contract out with different pathologists. Those will fly in, maybe work 3 or 4 days, fly back out, and it's a constant revolving door instead of hiring those people that are permanent. What I like about Kentucky is most of the time we have the same forensic pathologist day in and day out. So we're not having to reintroduce ourselves to those people. They trust us, we trust them. And it's kind of a seamless system that works back and forth.
Yeah, and you know who you're going to work with, and they'll even bounce back and forth between locations to help each other out so that they have somebody there that day.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so back to like the paying somebody to do autopsies and stuff, contracting it out. That kind of made me think about private autopsies, like when families want to request an autopsy if we don't see the need for one. How does that work?
Well, in this state, I get the question all the time, can a family refuse an autopsy? The answer is yes, the family can refuse it, but ultimately the coroner is who has the final say-so on whether an autopsy has to be done. And so once that's decided, if I look at medical records, I'm looking at toxicology, I look at every single thing, and I can piece that case together 100%, then I'm not going to put that family through an autopsy. Now, if a family is looking for something specific and they say, we still want that autopsy, then there is private companies that do those. UK does those, U of L does those, University of Tennessee does those, and the family would have to pay for that up front and then work with a funeral home to get that body moved from their place to wherever the autopsy is, and then from there back. And that happens every now and then. A lot of times it happens because of litigation. It's not the fact that we don't know the cause and manner of death. It's the fact that the family has litigation, or they want litigation on something that went wrong, or lung disease. A lot of times the mesothelioma, when that comes out, you see all the lawsuits and you see all the stuff that comes out on that. That's a big thing. A lot of times that is, okay, yeah, we want a lawsuit, and we're going to get nothing but the lungs done. So a lot of times that is not, it can be a forensic pathologist, but a lot of times it's a regular pathologist that'll do those, and they will concentrate just on one thing instead of what we want to see. And here's the myth. And the myth is, on TV, everybody gets autopsied, and that's not even close.
Yeah.
We may autopsy 30% of our cases. Anything that's going to go to court gets autopsied, of course. Any type of suspicious deaths, such as homicides, get autopsied. If I can't answer things, if the person has no medical history and nothing makes sense of why that person died, they're getting autopsied, because you only have one shot at doing this, and you want to make sure it's right. The neat thing about Kentucky is also that we work together as a team. And if we pick up the phone and we call and say, hey, we need an autopsy, then they're going to do that autopsy for us. And we do that quite often. And we went down Friday for an autopsy. No, Saturday. Had a case Friday. It got autopsied Saturday. We have a case today that'll get autopsied tomorrow. So we make sure that if we need that autopsy, it gets done.
There's a KRS statute, too, that says what cases also have to be autopsied. Like age is another factor.
Age plays in. We autopsy pretty much anybody under 18. 18 or under gets autopsied. We get called, even if it's a hospital death, we'll get called for anybody under 40. And we look at all those factors that come into play. It's interesting. I got a call today, and the call is, there's a House bill that's out there that has very good intentions. It talks about anybody that dies at a university or school would be autopsied. If that school owns it, say. So here's the example. Everybody thinks, okay, that's a good rule, and it sounds good rule on the surface, but now UK owns a lot of hospitals.
Yeah.
UK owns King's Daughters now.
Yeah.
So anything by that law, if it got passed, no matter what, if that person died in that hospital, we would have to take jurisdiction for that. And so our run volume would jump up probably 200 calls.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that's a bill that we're trying to work through that's like, okay, we need to kind of adjust this a little bit. And I get the intent behind it, but with that intent, it could cause us a lot of work that doesn't need to happen, because there's a lot of cases that people die at a hospital. It doesn't matter what hospital you go to, you're going to have a death there. And it's some more, some less, depending on the bigger hospitals compared to the smaller hospitals. So when that law, they tried to pass that last year and it didn't go anywhere, it didn't get any traction. This year it's up again. And right now we're following that law really close to try to work out with legislators a lot of the kinks behind that they don't know about or don't see.
So that also makes me think. I'm just going to say stuff that I'm thinking right now. I'm going to start asking questions. So a lot of TV shows and stuff with bigger hospitals have in-house pathologists in the hospitals. So I don't think there's one around here that's like that in our area, because we're kind of a smaller area. But like in bigger hospitals like U of L, UK, and Lexington, do they have in-house pathologists for that kind of work?
They do. And that's who would do the private autopsies a lot of times. And plus, they have plenty of work at the hospitals.
Yeah.
Fun fact is, King's Daughters used to have their own pathology. And some of the older coroners that were way before my time, they would use them to help determine cause and manner of death, because they were right there on staff and it was easy. So that is a fun fact that, yes, even though it's a small place, they had their own pathologist there.
Interesting. Okay, so we ended the last episode with like our next steps, what we do and everything. So Now you're at that next step. You finish all your documentation. You've got them ready for autopsy. But what has made you know that you need to send them to autopsy? What kind of questions go through your head?
I always have like a set of questions that I start answering. I want to know what's happened in the last 72 hours, anywhere from 72 to 48 hours and up to the time of death. What went on? Is there anything that would have killed that person? Do they have a long medical history? Are there any testing that we need to do besides what we can do here? Is an autopsy truly going to tell us anything different than if we do a postmortem examination, which is an external examination, toxicology, pull medical records, and look at testing? If the answer of any of that is yes, then that person's going to get autopsied. So that's when we look at that and say, okay, we need to go. And when that happens, we don't do a ton of stuff with the body compared to what we normally would. Like we talked about in the last episode, if we bring anybody back to the morgue, we're going to shoot pictures, we're going to undress them, we're going to make sure that we do toxicology, all that stuff gets done. If it goes to autopsy, basically we come back to the morgue. Yes, we're still going to shoot pictures. We're going to check pockets. We're going to do all that. But then we're going to make sure that the bag has to be sealed. We have to write on there who sealed it, what time it got sealed. We have to work on getting all the medical records. We have to do Casper reports. All that happens, and we duplicate the file.
Yeah.
So I do every single thing with a file, and then I duplicate it and make 2 copies. And then that body is taken down first thing in the next morning, and we get the autopsy done. We need that to get answers. And a lot of people are like, that takes a long time. It does. Probably the quickest you're going to get anything back is 45 days. But in Kentucky, that's pretty cool, because I know it seems like a lot when you're waiting as a loved one.
Yeah.
But if you go to other states, that could drag out to 6 months. That could drag out to a year. And if it drags out past 45 days, we're picking up the phone going, hey, why is this taking so long? A classic example, we had a guy, and he was, I want to say, late 30s, early 40s, and we sent him off for autopsy. He had a little bit of medical history, but he didn't have a lot. And we could not pinpoint why this person died. And when it came down to it, it kept on dragging on and dragging on. And I would call, and I'd be going, hey, we're 2 months into this. We're running more tests. And finally, after about 4 to 5 months into this, the only thing they could think of why this person died was a hugely high sodium level in his body.
Yeah.
That's why he died. He had this sodium level was off the charts. And that was the only thing that stuck out. Well, the good thing I was glad that we autopsied him, because number one, they take samples. So they have tissue samples, they got blood samples, they got all this stuff, and they start digging. And it's just like, let's follow the breadcrumbs and let's find out exactly why. So if this doesn't work, then let's go to this test. Let's go to this test. And finally, we were able to tell that family, hey, this is why he died. And in turn, they would have never found that if the pathologist hadn't worked as hard as they did to get those tests done to give those families the answers they need.
Yeah. And that's a big thing with like pertinent negatives too, that I don't think a lot of people realize. You can get told no, but still it leads you to the answer just as much as maybe a yes would. Like, ruling things out is going to help you get to the final cause just the same way.
And you're exactly right. Ruling things out helps you just as much as finding things.
Yeah.
And if you can start it's just like taking a checklist. Boom, boom, boom. This goes. Blood work always plays a major role. Electrolytes plays a major role. And you start looking at those things. A lot of people don't realize, if you see acetone, a lot of times we would see acetone in a test for when we test for drugs of abuse. Well, if there's no drugs of abuse and we got acetone, then the next question I'm asking is, okay, are they diabetic? Well, yeah, they are. Well, that's because the acetone's there because they have hyperglycemia. Their blood sugar's sky high, and our toxicology reports picks that up. So that's a cause of death. Okay, they had complications of the hyperglycemia, and that's why in turn, it helped with her death. So that's what we see a lot of.
And that's another thing with like toxicology too. We have to get permission to do those specialty testing, to whereas they can go down there and they're like, I don't see anything here, so I'm going to go ahead and ask for this just in case. Like I need that kind of checked off in my head too, but we have to actually get permission to be able to do that. So that's why it's good to send them down there.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is it saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we check drugs of abuse, and boom, it goes out, and it tests for several different drugs across a broad spectrum. The cool thing about toxicology is if you get toxicology done at a hospital, it's going to give you positives and negatives.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it's going to give you. It's going to say this is positive, this is negative, and it's about a 12-panel test. Ours is a whole lot more extensive, and it gives us quantitative levels. One of the questions that I saw on our Ask the Coroner page was a girl said she used to be an addict.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, her numbers would always run extremely high because of her tolerance.
Yeah.
And when we look at toxicology, one of the biggest things people need to realize is we're not just looking at numbers. We're looking at the whole system, the whole scene. So we're looking at the numbers, we're looking at how they were found, we're looking at what they were found with. All this stuff plays into a puzzle that we put together, and then we can say, okay, this is it. There's been many times that I pick up the phone and I call the toxicologist and I'll say, okay, this is the level that we see. Can that kill that person? Well, give me the history. So we start putting that together to where finally we get to the end and it's like, yes, that could easily, with that kind of level, it could easily cause a heart arrhythmia. It could easily cause a respiratory depression. It could easily do this, do that. So now we know, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Specialty testing plays a major role because at the ME's office, they can say, okay, we're going to check a complete drug of abuse panel or it's called a comprehensive, instead of just a regular drug of abuse panel. We had a lady that did self-harm to herself, and she used a substance that we would have never caught on a toxicology. And when we did interviews, they were like, you really need to look into this. So looked into it. They did the autopsy. There's nothing there. Her toxicology come back clean, and it's like, let's test for this. Mm-hmm. And this happened to be real popular on backdoor websites, and teenagers were using it to do self-harm to themselves. And sure enough, we tested. That test was $550, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And that one test ruled what her cause of death is. We were able to determine that's exactly what she did. She drank this substance that looked like water, and boom, that turned out to be why she died. So stuff like that, the coroner's report, the persons on scene, things like that play a major role with the medical examiner, especially in our system, because those are your eyes and ears. Mm-hmm. They're going to read your report. They're going to look at that. They're going to see what's going on, and then we kind of go from there.
Well, and they match it from that too, because another thing that differs from our testing compared to the hospitals is the actual breakdown. Like, it'll list out, like, if it's fentanyl. It's not just like opioids or benzos that they tested positive or negative for. It's the drug, and then it's the value.
Exactly, and that's what makes the difference with us. I think we talked about this the other day, but if somebody comes in and they're there for a length of time and then pass away, and it's a coroner's case because it's a suspicious death or it's an unnatural death, I should say, we want the admission blood, because mm-hmm. admission blood is like gold to us. Mm-hmm. We don't want blood that person dies. They come in the hospital on Monday, they die on Wednesday, and we get them. We're not going to do toxicology on their blood right then and there. What we're going to do is go back to the lab and say we need the admission blood. We get it because it's not.
It hasn't circulated.
Yeah, it hadn't circulated. It's been. Basically, it's like the golden ticket because it doesn't have any drugs in it or anything else that the hospital has put in there to skew our numbers. Mm-hmm. So we send that off and get the true numbers of when they came through the door at the ER.
Okay. So we got a little off topic because toxicology is so important. But that's another thing I think people don't realize is that postmortem exams aren't just the full Y incision, take everything out and look at it from start to finish. You can do just a postmortem exam with your eyes, an external, an internal, which is the full cut, toxicology, anything like that. But where we said that we did the postmortem exam in our office, we can also send them to the ME's office for an external, just because they have that doctor's degree and they might know something about this sign that we wouldn't know.
And we've did that before. We've sent it down and they call us back and say, hey, we think we can just do an external examination and toxicology. And it's like, well, I could have did that 2 hours and saved myself 2 hours. But it's like, yes, if you feel comfortable with that, you're the one that's signing off on it. You're a forensic pathologist. Yeah, I'll take your word, whatever you say. And so they'll go ahead and do that. And they have all rights to do that. They're the same way if we're trying to recover, say, a projectile, and we just need that one specific part of the body opened up to get that projectile because we can't get it, we will do that. A long time ago, you learn really quick to never bury a body with a projectile in it.
Yeah.
So no matter what, we're gonna try to get that projectile. So we will send it down. They will work on just that part, get what we need, and then we're done. We don't go any further except for toxicology and everything.
So why is it that you don't want to bury somebody with a projectile?
You never know. I mean, cases get revisited. Things happen. You want to make sure that it is truly. If somebody says they were shot with a shotgun, and I'm looking at an X-ray and there's not pellets in there, I'm sitting there going, "Okay, we got a problem here."
Yeah.
Or if it is one caliber and they tell us it's a certain caliber, the gun's a 9mm, and all of a sudden they've got a 45 slug in them, that's going to tell us real quick we got a problem. So we never bury that body with a projectile in it.
Yeah. And that's another thing, how we were talking about how it takes so long to actually go to prosecution litigation process. So you don't want to get there and then get questioned about it and have to exhume that body instead of just having the projectiles there in the evidence room that you can go pull when you need them.
That's exactly right. I mean, everything is a piece of the puzzle, and we want to have every. I'm selfish. I want every piece of the puzzle I can possibly get, and so every piece of the puzzle is what makes out the case. And if you follow that evidence, you're going to get the truth. But you got to follow the evidence. You can't go in with blinders on. You can't go in just already passing judgment and thinking this is what it is, because you got to have a set thing in your head, but never just let that get tunnel vision. You never want that tunnel vision. So with everything else, you want everything to lead you where you need to go, and that's where you find the truth, and the truth is what matters, and the truth is what you have to have for the families and everybody else that goes with it.
So with the exhumation process, would there ever be a chance where you did have to exhume a body and then do an autopsy then, like years down the road, that hadn't happened when the case was first worked?
Oh yeah, it could be new information comes in, anything like that, that may totally change the way something was placed on a death certificate and everything, and that happens all over the world. I've had a couple of questions on the page, on both the TikTok page and the Ask a Coroner page on the Facebook page, of do you look at other cases? Do you look at cases from other states? And the answer is no, I don't. And the reason I don't is you don't get the whole story. Family members, a lot of times, they do not want to believe that this happened to their loved one, and I completely understand that. And that's why I always let the evidence speak for itself. If somebody brings me something, they only have one part of the puzzle, and that's all they have. They may have the coroner's report or they may have the police report, but they don't have the pictures. They don't have all the reports that were done that day. They don't have the video that was filmed that day at the scene. They don't have any of that to where somebody else can look at that and say, okay, here it is. Could they get that? Maybe. Kentucky has a law that basically our pictures are used for evidence only. They're not used to hand out to anybody. So you can't come into our office and file an open records request and pick up our pictures or take pictures from the case. And there's reasons for that. All that I think is very sacred and very private. And if something needs to happen with an autopsy or with a court case, then yes, we're going to show those pictures, and we're going to pick out so many pictures that can be shown. and that's how it's going to happen. But besides that, they stay under lock and key, and I think that's owed to any family.
So, when a case goes to autopsy, who is there, and what are the first steps when you're arriving at that autopsy suite?
So we'll walk through what's going to happen tomorrow. So in the morning, the transporter that was on today with me, that worked the case with me, she's going to take that body down. And the reason she's taking it down is because she was there. She was there through all the steps. So she will take it down. She'll leave at 5 in the morning. There will be also police with this case. So the police officer will come down also. We know what time to be there. Once we pull in, she will go and she'll call the front desk that has a security guard. Security guard will come to the back door, let her in, and she will wheel the body up to the examination suites. Once that body's brought up there, then there's a computer system set there. That body will be checked in. It's weighed. Everything's wrote in about the body, such as the name, the age, who brought it, who the person was that brought it, contact number, all that stuff. So once that's done, if they're not ready at that time, then the body will go in their cooler and we'll wait. If they are ready, then it'll come in, and depending on the case, it could be put through a Lotus system, which used to be, it was old school x-rays. You had to sit there and every x-ray took several minutes.
Yeah.
Now it's not like that. So now it's a Lotus system, which is like a big CT scanner almost, and the body's run through there that'll pick up anything that we want picked up as far as wounds, if there's anything in the body, anything like that. Then it's brought inside to the ME itself, and the ME will have also a autopsy technician there. The body is moved over onto their table from our cot, and then a lot of times, depending on the case, the body is washed off, pictures are taken every step of the way. Then they start doing the actual, quote, autopsy, and it may be that they do the Y incision. Once that's done, the organs are weighed. A lot of times when we get an autopsy report, it's anywhere from 7 to 9 pages, and it'll have just how it starts. It'll have to the point of how long somebody's hair was on their head. It'll tell if there's any injuries to any specific part of the body, and they do every part of the body. They start at the head, they work their way down, any extremity, if there's any bruises, if there's any cuts, if there's any, when you get the body open with a Y incision, how big was the spleen? How big was the heart? A normal heart's anywhere from 300 to 350 grams is a big heart. If a heart is 500 grams, we want to know it. Then we look at what's called cardiomegaly, and cardiomegaly is an enlarged heart. That's a big word that's what that is. So they will look at that. They'll look at the lungs, and they want to know if the lungs are wet. A lot of times wet lungs will tell us different things, but if, say, somebody has a drug history, wet lungs may tell us that what happened with a respiratory drive is they took the drugs and the respiratory drive was breathing normal, and then all of a sudden it starts slowing down and slowing down. Well, the more it slows down, the more fluid will start backing up from the heart because it can't pump like it should, which in turn will cause the lungs to fill up with fluid. Other things can do that also. You can look at congestive heart failure. You can look at when somebody goes into pulmonary edema. So there's different things, but again, it's a piece of the puzzle. What do their kidneys look like? What does their liver look like? What does their spleen look like? All that is noted, and all that is taken out, and it's weighed, and we try to find out if any of that makes part of the puzzle. Do they have some type of medical disease they didn't know about? Is there a blood clot? Maybe a blood clot in the lung. So there's different things. If we're looking for something specific, say it's a gunshot wound, then they're gonna use rods, and they're gonna put those rods in there to try to find out the trajectory of the bullet, which matters to us greatly to prove if somebody tells me, well, I was standing right here and we pulled the trigger and it hit him dead center of the chest. Well, when we run the trajectory rod, that bullet may have been at a downward angle or an upward angle, and it's like, no, that's not what happens. Forensically, we can prove that.
Yeah.
If it's a stabbing, we're gonna make sure that we document every stab wound on that person so we can go back in court and say, okay, they were stabbed X number of times. These are where they were at. They were this deep. We may be able to match up a knife. What's neat is the handle, and it's a hone is what it's called basically, but the handle of a knife, if somebody stabs real hard and they're going in there like that, a lot of times the indention of the knife, of the handle of that knife, will be on the body. We want that picture if it's there.
Yeah.
So stuff like that really matters when it comes to actually documenting something. But what it's not going to tell you a lot of times is, okay, they've had a heart attack. Well, that's hard to tell. They may see the heart has some type of disease. Mm-hmm. It's big, vessels are dilated, but actually saying, okay, 110%, no. Now, what I can say is you had an arrhythmia with your heart, which means basically your heart went out of rhythm. And in turn, that could have been caused by several different things, from a blood clot to an electrical issue. There's several things that can do that, and things like that's what we're looking for.
So then they'll take pictures. You send your file, and it has every single thing that you keep in your file at the office. It has your report, any medical records you have, all of your pictures, and then you also fill out an authorization form that gives them kind of a rundown. That
is correct, yeah. So the authorization form kind of tells them briefly what happened, what we think happened, and we even put on there what kind of death we think actually occurred as far as a manner of death. Mm-hmm. Was it a homicide? Was it a suicide? Was it a natural causes death that we're just trying to find an answer to? Was it an overdose versus a medical emergency? All those things come into play, but that gives them a little insight of what's going on. Mm-hmm. What I like about our office is we make sure that transporter stays with the body.
Yeah.
So if the ME or the autopsy tech, either one, says, hey, why is this here like this? Well, because they were laying on that object. And now that object, the form of that object is actually on the skin, and that's why it's there.
Mm-hmm. So then do they give their pictures back from there too? Because we have a detective there usually also. So the detective's taking pictures.
Yes. So anything that comes up in the autopsy, say it's a gunshot and that trajectory of that bullet went through the heart, we're going to be able to get a better picture because I can't get that without X-ray vision, of course. So when we open up the heart, then we get that picture at the autopsy suite of, oh, there it is. Mm-hmm. So then we could use that to say, okay, that bullet traveled through the left ventricle or it hit the aorta, or say it's a car wreck. And we open up the chest and we know that the aorta has an arch right at the top of the heart. It comes down and there's an arch there. And when somebody wrecks, especially with a T-bone wreck, a lot of times they're hitting the side. If it's a very forceful hit, the body goes one way and the upper body goes another way, so you get this tearing. And so when we do the autopsy, it's like, oh, wait a minute, the arch there in the aorta has a tear in it. And now we have a cause of death. So all that is photographed there, and we get their pictures also.
So then at that point, does their evidence come back to you and you still sign out the death certificate, or do they now get the authority to sign out the death certificate?
The coroner is always the one that signs the death certificate out. So what happens is we wait for everything that they document, all their testing, everything's done. They send that up to our office electronically. Then I'm able to sign that death certificate out.
Do they get to come testify in a courtroom?
Yes. So what happens if we go to court, I testify to what I did and how I signed the death certificate out, and then the medical examiner that did the autopsy will also be there. They're subpoenaed to court to where they can also testify of why they signed it that way or why they gave us the findings they gave us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we were talking about this before we started recording. The whole jurisdiction thing, where we're in the tri-state, we have Ohio and West Virginia right here that we have to work alongside all the time. So what happens, and King's Daughters isn't a level 1 trauma center, so a lot of our trauma cases in this area will go to a different state. So how does that alter our jurisdiction if somebody dies at a trauma center in the different state?
So what happens, we work really well with West Virginia authorities especially because that's where all trauma goes. So what ends up happening is they will pick up the phone and call me hey, we've got XYZ and this person's deceased now. Are you all going to prosecute for any reason? Do you want this body back? If it's any type of prosecution, the answer is yes. So we will get the body back, and West Virginia will give us all their findings as far as all the medical records, every mission blood, anything they can get. We get that. And then we bring it back to our county and I'm ready it for autopsy. It will go to autopsy in our state. Our ME's office will give their findings, and then everything still goes to West Virginia because the death occurred there. And what ends up happening is West Virginia's medical examiner's office will use all of our findings to sign out that death certificate. And a lot of times we do that just because of jurisdictional issues of it's going to be prosecuted over here. We would like to be able to work the scene and work everything that we can about that death. There's a lot of times that we've had bad car wrecks, or we've had we had a homicide in town here of a shooting that, and they flew it out, and then the person died. We ended up getting that back, and then what'll end up happening is then we can use our pathologists and things to testify of why it's like that, for the cause and manner, anyways.
Okay, family wants a body back here. So what happens if West Virginia would happen to do an autopsy on a case there? How does family get that body back?
They have to work with the ME's office there in Charleston, and usually that works with a funeral home and things like that. So it all depends on how long they want to hold that body, how long it takes to get the autopsy done over there before that actually comes back. I've had a lot of families that do call and say, hey, it's been 3 days. What's taking so long over there? My answer is I really don't know. I'll try to find out, and I'll try to help you. I know here at the most we're going to have that body back in a day. And that's just because we have to have it at the ME's office by 7:30 in the morning. Anything that comes in after that, then it has to wait to the next day. And the reason being is usually they're so slammed. They may have 5 to 10 cases or whatever they have to autopsy that day. If we're there by 7:30, then they go ahead and do that just to give convenience to us and to help us to where we can get that body back out.
Okay, so a lot of our questions this week had to deal with autopsies and stuff, so I hope that we answered those mostly in here. So this question might be a little off topic, but it's still a really good one that's going to get some conversation. So Kim Nunley asks, could you go over the DNR laws and how they play a factor in a death investigation? Also, who can decide against a DNR? DNR is do not resuscitate if the person has one, such as if they have a power of attorney.
Do not resuscitate has become more and more popular as times went on. And what Kentucky has did to do that is there's actually 2 different types of DNRs. There's a do not resuscitate that's like an advance directive, and that works for hospitals. That's great. It's no big deal. You know, you come into the hospital and you can sign off that you do not want to be resuscitated, and they will honor that all day long. But what we run into and what a lot of people run into, especially first responders, in Kentucky, it has to be an EMS DNR. And you can actually pull that offline through the Kentucky Board of EMS. You can stop by your local ambulance service and ask for one of those. And that DNR is usually one paper, but it has to follow that body. It has to, like if, say, your grandfather has a DNR, and you have that EMS DNR, and EMS gets called because of he's short of breath, then make sure that a part of that, or at least a copy of that, goes with the body or goes with the patient when they transport it to the hospital. Because if something happens between the house and the hospital, the paramedics are not going to have a choice but to go ahead and start resuscitative measures if they do not have that paper. I've seen papers ripped up. Families sign that paper, and then mama or papa or their mom or dad or whoever it is goes into cardiac arrest. And I've seen families take that paper and rip it up because at that last moment they want as much done for their loved one as possible. Power of attorney is kind of the same thing because there's different powers of attorney. You can have medical power of attorney or not. Medical power of attorney is what we look at. But the problem is that power of attorney stops at death. So I could make you my power of attorney to handle all my medical problems, which is scary, but I could do that. And then in turn, I could, when I die, my wife would still make those decisions, or my son or my daughter has to still make those decisions because that's who we go by. And by law, we have to follow that power of attorney at the whole time. So that all comes into play, and that becomes a big. It's actually a mess a lot of times at homes. You got brothers, sisters, whatever, and they have the DNR handed or kind of taped up there for dad, and dad goes into cardiac arrest. Somebody picks up the phone, calls 911. Paramedics get there, and one brother or sister wants it resuscitated, one doesn't, and somebody takes the paper and rips it up, and then that can happen. So your mind can be changed at any given time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand that. It's not one size fits all. But the reason a lot of times first responders go ahead and start CPR is the fact that nobody can produce that. And if you can't produce it, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
If that person is still warm, if they, usually within 5 to 10 minutes of being down, deceased, and has no pulse, somebody's going to start CPR on them. CPR saves lives, and we know that. So, and CPR has been pushed so much with just hands-free CPR and AED availability, all this stuff that we get a lot of times at the hospitals, you know as well as I do, in the ER where ambulance services have worked them in, and then when they get there, families like, no, they've got to do not resuscitate.
Yeah.
And the ER stops, well, that still becomes our case. So we go to the ER and they're like, hey, they had a DNR and they worked them into the hospital. And it's like, okay. So we go ahead and work that case just like we would any other case. But those are the two big things that people need to remember about that is it can be ripped up at any time, but it has to be on that body. It has to be on that patient at that time. So if you're sending people to the doctor's office, you're sending people to the hospital and things like that, what happens in between that time if that person goes into cardiac arrest and they don't have the DNR is somebody's going to work them just like they would anybody else.
And is that the same for all states, or is it just Kentucky where you have to have an EMS one?
It actually differs in all states. So whatever state you're in, you want to find out what those rules are,
Yeah.
and specifically what the EMS rules are.
Yeah.
Because that matters. Kentucky didn't have that probably 20 years ago, and I know they didn't have it back in 1990 when I first started working EMS 88. We didn't have that, and it was always a big battle a lot of times. And then we finally got it, and people just didn't understand it, and we had to actually go through and walk them through of this is what you have to have. This is why they need that. The bottom of those DNRs in Kentucky has, like, you can take a pair of scissors and cut that and make a bracelet and put on somebody. So there's different things that you can use it. People don't know that.
Yeah. And I just think people don't know, and they might hand EMS their DNR, but it's for a hospital, it's not for EMS, and then they get mad that EMS has to work them.
That's exactly
and then
right.
switch it. They end up having to switch it to palliative care in a trauma room instead of letting them die at the house like they wanted to.
Yeah. And that happens a lot of times that we'll get a case that's been in the ER probably 6-8 hours, and it hadn't been moved upstairs because they had made them comfort care. And when they make them comfort care, they basically make them palliative care and wait for them to die. And so it could be because they had a DNR or the family doesn't think that was the wishes. And so whoever was next to kin has now made them comfort care. So we basically work that case just like we would any other case as long as it's in the ER.
Okay, so that was our one question a day. Thank you, Kim. I knew that would spark some good conversation. I hope we answered everybody's questions about autopsies. If we didn't, make sure that you're still leaving those in the comments on the YouTube, on TikTok, or you can message our Ask a Coroner page directly on Facebook. Anything. Keep spreading the word out. Our social medias are still continuously growing. We're getting a lot of good response, a lot of good engagement, things like that. So we can't thank you guys enough for doing that.
I know on our Facebook page we went from the other night we were like at 592. Now we're up to like 630, I think. The other thing is this is our third episode. So what we plan on doing, just so everybody kind of follows us along, is we will not drop another episode till next week. And then it's going to be once a week like any other podcast. So throw your questions at us. We still have questions to answer. There's a lot of questions that people have sent us. And you may be lucky and we pick your case. So, and we answer your questions that you always wanted to know about death investigation.
Yeah. And I think our last point is that we are still accepting sponsors. We want to keep this thing going. We want to get the word out about your all's companies too. Our first sponsor is SCU Services, Scene Cleanup Services. They're an environmental company that come all over the state of Kentucky and do cleanup for anything. They do hoarding cases. They can do decomposition cases for different deaths, blood cleanups, different things like that, anything biohazard. So make sure to contact them if you need any of those services, and any other sponsors that would like to be mentioned in the podcast. Please reach out to us and keep this thing going.
Thank you all.
Thank you.